Hello, this is Catalog and Cocktails. It's your honest, no BS, non-salesy conversation about enterprise data management with tasty beverages in hand. I'm Tim Gasper, longtime data nerd, joined by Juan Sequeda.
Cheers.
Hey, Juan.
Well, we're doing a different episode. Yes, this is pre-recorded. Yes, we are in different places. We're actually in a nice bar here in South Austin.
It's an Asian fusion smokehouse.
It's called Loro from the same folks behind Franklin's.
Yeah.
And we were like, well, we're here already having a cocktail. And we got a lot of busy traveling and stuff, so let's go pre-record a couple episodes, and here we are.
Yeah, and we wanted to bring some insights to you all coming from a trip. So we were in the UK and Switzerland for a total of, 10 days?
10 days.
Yeah.
And we spoke to a lot of people, a lot of our customers, a lot of friends and family, basically. And I think what we are very lucky that in our roles and we have the opportunity to kind of talk to so many people and kind of get a pulse on what is the market, what's actually going on, the honest, no BS conversation people are having outside of LinkedIn. Like let's actually go talk to people, let's meet at their offices, let's go have drinks afterwards, see what people are up to.
What's the real stuff people are getting traction on and are interested in?
Let's get out of the LinkedIn bubble and talk about it. So, actually, I posted about this on LinkedIn like a week ago, and let's just go, we're going to go into these things that we identified and kind of dive into more of the details. So,
exactly. So, first one is we're hearing a lot about people talking about enterprise data marketplaces. So this is something that's coming up a lot, and this difference between a catalog, a traditional catalog where you're creating an inventory of your data and you're trying to understand kind of what data you have, maybe you're trying to classify it, you want data lineage so that way your technical users can do impact analysis and root cause analysis, things like that. But it doesn't necessarily drive broad-based adoption of sort of folks across the broader enterprise, right? But for the broader adoption, right, let's say you have 100 technical users, right, you may have thousands of less technical users that could be leveraging more of an Amazon kind of experience around data. Similarly, right, another analogy is like these people who are a little bit more technical, they may be interested in the thousands of tables and the hundreds of thousands of columns, but in terms of data products in a data marketplace within your enterprise, there might be 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 data products, right? And so one customer that we talked to in the UK, they said about 160 data products. And that makes sense. That's like a curated set of assets that people want to get access to. And they also said that most of their data products today are actually dashboards. And that's okay.
And this can be a controversial thing for a lot of folks in the LinkedIn circles talking about.
I posted about this on LinkedIn the other day, and it created some interesting discussion. Dashboards. Why is dashboards on your list, right?
Hey, at the end of the day, if it is providing value to the folks, and if that's what people want, to just give it to them.
Yeah, right? It's the low-hanging fruit. And so, for a long time, we've thought that data catalogs are kind of one-size-fits-all solutions, but really it's multi-tiered, right? You might have your catalog, the technical catalog, which is more for your technical users. You might have your business catalog, which is a little bit more for your broader business. And that's okay, right? And maybe some people only have access to the marketplace. And so, we've talked to all these different customers. Every single one of them brought up data products and data marketplace. It's probably the biggest lasting trend that has come out of the data mesh movement, and I think this is a really good thing.
Yeah, and I think also what I see is it's a way to address the whole how am I providing business value is like, well, I'm going to give something exactly the business people want and need, right? That's why, again, dashboards may be the answer to that stuff, and that's fine, right? Yep. And it's still bringing the whole product management mindset to these things. So definitely the marketplace is one of those things that is here to come, who's come and it's here to stay, and I think the other thing is I'm going to bet that now we're going to start seeing new startups or new companies saying this is my marketplace and you have to have a catalog and like this is where we're going to like typical people want to go partition the market and create new categories.
I mean, there's already some startups out there that are just like data product marketplace portals and things like that.
And I think this is going to be I think people are getting excited about this stuff, but I'm going to call BS on these things. At the end of the day, you got to be pragmatic, and I think these metadata management systems, they're going to have like two lenses, right? They're going to have the technical one and they're going to have the business one. The business one is called marketplace. So Number two, another trend that we saw is, hey, everybody is talking about data products, that we're saying, but a lot of the conversations we had were folks being very pragmatic about it, actually being and like not being the pedantic. So we would always ask everybody saying, so what is your definition of a data product? And 100% of the time we get a laugh because they knew that we were like yeah, it's a controversial topic and stuff, and everybody is going to be having some different definitions and so forth. And in reality, they were just being like super simple. It's like, I'm going to create things that our end users want. And if I do a product management kind of a mindset and I go talk to the people, I realize what they need, and that's what I'm going to deliver it.
Yep.
So if you look at it from very technical personas, they're thinking about the input ports, the output ports, and all that stuff, and having all these very strict contracts, and like, yeah, if that's what your end users want, go do that.
Right.
But for starters, you probably don't need that. And I think that was something that we saw, saying, look, we're going to keep it really, really simple, really pragmatic to start off with. And then, if we start seeing more issues are going to come up, that's fine. But we got to start somewhere. And we should not start from being very pedantic.
Yeah, and data products can be a lot of different things, right? They could be data dashboards, they could be data sets, like tables and views, right? Could be an API endpoint. Could be a streaming topic, could be an AI model, right? It could be an AI application, a GPT, right? We've seen some of our customers start to catalog GPTs. Now, I think going back to your comment about output ports, so when I posted on LinkedIn, there was a person who commented who was like, hey, actually, it sounds like you're talking about output ports, not data products. And I think this is such an interesting conversation because for companies or for people that really care about being very pedantic about data mesh, that is true. Those are output ports, not data products. But when somebody goes to your data product marketplace, right, and they're looking for a data product, and they say, I'm looking for a data set on blah, 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 what data product do you recommend? And you look them in the eye and you say, excuse me, sir, I think you are saying the wrong phrase here. I don't think you mean what you think you mean. You mean output port. Is your person coming to the data marketplace going to appreciate that conversation?
This is where we need to have empathy with our end users.
Yeah. So I mean, so I think, long story short, be careful to be too pedantic. Yeah. Like, meet your enterprise users where they are.
Exactly.
So third one, data quality actually came up a decent amount at the different customers and partners we were meeting with. And what's interesting is that a lot of folks are trying to decide, first of all, what is data quality? Like, what does it mean to their organization? Because I think data quality is something that, obviously, there's tools that can help you, but like, we get a little emoji here. There's like data tools that can help you, but then also there's just broad-based kind of improving data quality within the organization. And one thing that folks were trying to decide is like, well, what do you do first? Like, do you do data quality first? Do you do data cataloging first? Do you need to do both of these things at the same time? And I think that the key thing that we heard from everyone we were talking to was, don't overcomplicate it, don't boil the ocean. Also, be pragmatic about what is most important to your organization, right? Like, for example, if you need to really focus, like if you've got data pipeline failures and issues going on right now, maybe data quality is where you want to focus first. If you really are trying to drive compliance or drive an enablement around data, maybe data catalogs where you want to start first. But also, there's a lot of organizations that may want to try to tackle both at the same time. You have to be careful not to boil the ocean, but if you have Juan, you talk about the iron thread, right? Maybe you can focus on catalog and quality for that iron thread.
So I think also we're not saying that people are like, oh, I'm not going to be thinking about quality, so let's just put data products out there. It's like, no. Quality is something we need to go focus on. The question is, how much investment do I put in at the beginning, all the way to like, do I need to consider getting a tool and like do that first before I do anything else?
Yeah.
And then this is something that I see a lot of people grappling with. And it really depends. Again, if you're coming from a compliance perspective, like some places where it's like very clear that you've made the business use cases and why you need quality first, then yeah, probably you should get another tool, a tool first. But in some other situations we're talking to, it's like, you know what, I could probably get by for now by setting up some processes and using some existing pragmatic tools that I have. Like, how about if I set a bunch of SQL checks?
Yeah.
That I can do things, and then I can have a process that's checking that, and then the result of those SQL queries that does the checking will give me some of my initial data quality kind of dashboards.
Yeah.
That may be a very simple thing. You don't need to buy a tool. Yes, it may be a little bit complicated to set up, but it is something you can anybody in your data team can do that already. It's super low cost. I mean, you don't have to buy any tools.
Yeah.
That may be your starting point. And then I think they were realizing maybe we should start doing that and then figure out when that doesn't scale anymore. So
Yep.
be very pragmatic and open about it. And I think it's okay to realize I don't need to invest in a data quality tool first. It's still data quality, right? But I can do, but again, think about that balance.
Yep, I think that's exactly right. And last thing I'll say on this topic is that, like, one of the companies that we met with while we were in the UK said that we were asking them, hey, are you guys going to be focusing on data quality? Like, initially, have you purchased a tool to do data quality? And they actually said, no, since we're really focused on our data product marketplace, actually the process of registering data products, and including them in the marketplace is going to put quite a bit of rigor in place, and that is actually going to be okay for now, and that they'll do things later. Another company we met with, they actually purchased Soda, right, which is one of the data quality tools out there, and we're like, hey, yeah, we're going to implement this right away. We're going to put it in the hands of all the engineering teams. So you've got options.
And others are actually looking at open source versions of that stuff, and then they can say they can go. So you see, there's like you can do something like quick and dirty with like SQL. You can do it in an open source tool. You can get a tool. You can put it into your processes.
You can use a Soda or an Anomaly, or like there's a lot of stuff out there.
There's a lot of mix.
Yeah.
All right, the next one.
Next, we find that, so if there's kind of two movements, right? One of them is sort of this data product marketplace oriented movement, which is if you have a diagram, and for those watching the video, you'll see me gesturing. For those that you're listening, just imagine me gesturing. Is that on the left side, you've got your data sources. On the right-hand side, you've got your sort of dashboards and BI tools, right? And the data flows from left to right. You've got kind of data products and data marketplace kind of sitting a little bit more to the right-hand side, although you might be able to argue it's an overlay because data products can be anywhere along the pipeline, right? There's also this really big movement that we see across everyone we've talked to that's kind of this, let's call it like shift left, right? Which is how do we put more and more of the responsibility around data products and around sort of general ownership around the data. It could be even just as simple as documenting the data, right? How do we put more of that responsibility onto the data producers and the people to the left who are creating the data, that are working with the data, all the way up to even some of the source systems like Salesforce and things like that? How do we put more rigor and more responsibility on the upstream producers?
So I think it's the shift left mindset is about putting what we talk is you're shifting also the knowledge to the left. You want actually all that work, all the documentation, make sure that the data is coming out with the right schemas and so forth as fast as possible. Meaning that if whenever I start seeing that, I want to start seeing that already well documented with the right schemes and so forth. And that applies to both, obviously, if you own the systems that actually create the data, then you can push that even further left, right into the actual code that you're writing in those systems. But actually, in a way, is like, where am I putting all those barriers and those checks? So that is clear. And I think this one I will call out, saying the LinkedIn bubble community has been talking about shift left, and we're actually seeing this in practice. We're thinking about this. And actually, to the other comment of like, if I'm going to publishing these data products inside of the marketplace, I want to pass some of those tests. That's an example of the shift left. Like, nobody should be doing any checks after they get it on the data in the marketplace. It's going to be before. So that's already an example of that.
Yeah, and one other company that we talked to, so they're a very large global management consultancy. They use the phrase around shift left of operational governance. And what this person kind of defined as operational governance is when you're really trying to actually encode and enforce that sort of shift left philosophy on the pipelines, probably using something like data contracts, right? Now, what was interesting was that we all kind of, at the end of a long conversation, agreed that the focus should be on sort of process and visibility first and enforcement later, because enforcement can be hard, right? Especially if you're changing technologies, if you have a pretty large surface area of your pipelines and your stack. But that is the holy grail. Of course, we want to try to enforce this.
But here's the thing, like all these data contract specifications and all that stuff, at the end of the day, right now, that's a description of stuff. Like, who's actually making these enforcements? I don't know. I mean, this is so hard to enforce, and so many places need to be enforced. So the starting point here is actually the transparency, like having that the processes around that. Like, but that's why we need to actually start documenting that first. So that's that first step. then enforcement will come later on. And then at the end of the day, like we have to. I don't think this is. We don't even know this as a community yet. Like how these enforcement should be done and who's responsible for this stuff. And actually, what happens if you don't if you don't follow these guidelines?
What happens when an enforcement triggers? Somebody gets an email and it says, "Bad, you've been very bad," right? No, I think it's exciting. This shift left movement and certainly data contracts and some of these other pieces are a big part of that.
And then our fifth trend that we've seen, this is a clear now fact of life. I think metadata is key for AI, specifically for generative AI, for these large language models. I think that's a state. That's
I was actually
fact.
surprised at how much companies all agreed with this.
Yeah, there was nobody pushing back. I'm like, well, do I really need that stuff? No. This is a matter of fact. This is why everybody knows that if I'm going, whatever tool I'm going to use where my data is, the Snowflakes, the Databricks of the world, whatever, that is going to have AI. That's going to have my data. It's going to have your AI LLMs. I need to have my context. That needs to be managed somewhere. That's where your metadata comes in. These are why catalogs are so important and critical are these things. That's why your semantic layers come in. They should be managed in your catalogs. That's why your knowledge graphs is your foundation of these things. This is a clear fact of life. People understand this, and that is actually very refreshing, and I'm really excited that this is not something we gotta go fight for anymore and explain it. People understand this now. So that was an easy one.
That's a beautiful thing, right? And I was expecting a little bit of the hype bubble to still exist around some of the Gen AI and things like that. But actually, I felt like all of the conversations we had with customers, partners, community experts was very level-headed about Gen AI. It wasn't doom and gloom. It wasn't like this stuff sucks. It wasn't like, oh, all we have to do is throw Gen AI at it. It was like, hey, context plus Gen AI will be the answer.
And then start first with the data products. You can now use Gen AI. People are expecting to use it to help us to go do that metadata context enrichment work. The human's always in the loop, like things that we've been talking about, things that people have been talking about in the LinkedIn bubble. That is actually what we're seeing in reality. And people are not, I think, are very calmed down, saying there's no expectation that I'm going to have my chatbot doing all my stuff for me automatically so quick. So that's good.
Exactly.
And then the sixth one that we've seen, the sixth trend, and this one comes up when you talk to more enterprise architects. So these are actually folks who are not just inside of the data analytics work streams, but they're actually seeing, architecting basically data for the entire enterprise. And where they realize it's not just a data strategy, but it's a metadata strategy. And these are the folks who are saying, look, I want to start pulling and connecting the metadata from all different systems, not just the data analytics one. So there's data analytics systems, my dashboards, my databases, my ETL tools, right? But there are things I want to bring in, like my existing enterprise architecture management systems, my business process management systems, heck, other technical data catalogs out there. There could be Unity catalog, there could be Glue, all that stuff, right? I want to bring in the employee data that's inside of my employee management system, or like my workforce management system. And then I have all these different terminology, business glossaries and so forth, right? We want to start building this all together. So in a way, I see this trend also connected to what Ole has been doing with the Metagrid. And so it's really great that people are now thinking about this, but the people who are thinking about it are these enterprise data architects who are thinking about metadata as a strategy to really create, quote unquote, the digital twin of your organization, right? To build that enterprise brain, like, and now here's the thing, they're not just putting it together for the sake of putting things together for like just documentation purposes. I think it's very clear. One, I think three use cases that I'm seeing. One is about like finding experts. They spend too much time wasting time finding people. The second one is doing some business impact analysis. So if there is a system that is going down or that they're going to change or update, whatever, how does that particular system, I'm going to update, I'm going to swap my SAP workforce management for a Workday, whatever, like what are all the things that are going to be involved to go do that thing, right? That's another, or there's a cybersecurity attack or something about vulnerable, where's that all going to be affected? So you want to be able to have that. The other one is to have like an accelerated application development. So if I'm really managing all my metadata in one place, I want to make sure that other systems that are consuming it, I can consume all that governed metadata in a way that I can build applications faster. And then, tying it back to the previous point, it's about your context that your AI doesn't have. So they see this as a way of building all that context for generative AI.
This is all very real ROI. And I think that's exciting. And what I hope, right, am I willing to say that this will become a trend? I don't know. But what I hope I think it'll become a trend, is that companies more and more are going to be asking themselves and others, what is your metadata strategy? And I think what Ole's been kind of really advocating around the metagrid is a great example of that. And, Swiss Post, who we were hanging out with, right? I think they're an example of a company that really is thinking about the metagrid.
Yeah. And I think there's so many people who have already been doing it, and then now they're realizing that I think that the AI has been kind of a way of saying, I'm putting all this stuff together for the context they need to go build, but they have the that is kind of one of the excuses, or quote unquote excuses or motivators for it. But then they're able to say, oh, here are these other use cases which are not just AI, because doing all this work just for AI, like the people are going to call bullshit for this very soon, right? It has to hit so many different use cases. So I think that's what people are realizing. Now, what's interesting is that this is broader than just data analytics. So for folks who are listening who are just in the data analytics space, like, this is an opportunity to really think about this as a broader perspective. Go talk to your other architects around your company, and go think about how the metadata work that you're doing for your silo connects with the metadata work that's being done across other different silos.
Yep. So this was Tim and Juan, boots on the ground, talking to people, just relaying to you what we're finding.
Don't shoot the messengers. We're just passing on exactly what we've been hearing.
We didn't advocate for one thing or another. We're just saying what we're hearing, and it's exciting. I feel like this is a really cool moment for companies right now around data, because I think that now we have AI, we have data, we have metadata, right? I think there's a lot of focus around really empowering people with data. So you've got things like data products being really at the center. Now is a great opportunity for where we're not caught in too much hype, and we're not caught in too much being on the hind foot, where it's a great opportunity for data leaders to make a lot of progress.
With that, cheers, everybody. By the way, we're having a ginger old fashioned. We forgot to talk about that.
That's true. This is a ginger old fashioned.